Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is good to be back. This is Erica, and today we are not, I repeat, not doing the podcast on my server, thanks to a little snafu we had a couple weeks ago. We're going to try this again on someone else's server, and in fact, it's the person who dropped out a couple weeks ago, and we are going to get into that here shortly. To start out today, we're talking about Nick Fuentes. Now, the last time we talked about Nick Fuentes, it was just a simple question that isn't even a question. Is he gay or is he gay? And the answer was he's fucking gay. This time we're bringing up Nick Fuentes because we recently found out that he was arrested the day before Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the circumstances surrounding that. And then we are going to talk about something along the same vein, specifically about gender critical ideologues that reinforce Nick Fuentes' phrase, "Your body, my choice." And then we will be getting back to Liz's discussion of anarchist mobile communities. And with that, I would like to introduce Liz, our friend from the South. Please say hello, Liz.
Hello! And for once, people are right. I am originally from the South and I am currently living here.
Good old Florida.
That's right, but I'm originally from Mississippi. I don't know if you know that about me.
No, I don't. I did not know that, and you actually hide that accent very well.
That's because I was adopted when I was 3.5. And the first thing that I learned was that if I spoke with my Southern accent, those elitist Michigan people would call me dumb. So I got rid of my accent ASAP.
Of course. Okay. So then we're going to move on to our friend from the East, Natalia. Please say hello, Natalia.
Hi, hello.
And for anyone wondering, she is a little bit under the weather, but she's still here to be a part of this discussion. So we appreciate you being here, even though you're sick.
Thank you, Natalia.
And then, of course, my recently made friend, Haley, who is also a fucking Marine, and I just absolutely love the idea of having two Marines on this podcast fucking shit up.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is actually the first time I've ever been on a podcast, so I'm excited to be here today and talk with all of you guys.
I'm so excited that I'm on your first podcast. This is the first podcast I've ever done and the only one I ever do.
Before we get into Nick Fuentes, I just wanted to go back to Haley. She was talking about her time on Pendleton. I didn't mean to cut you short, just because we had to start. Could you finish that up for us?
Oh no worries about cutting me off. Do whatever you gotta do. Like I said, I've never been on a podcast before, and I have a tendency to ramble if people don't cut me off, so feel free if I ever start. That was pretty much all I was saying. It's a really tough environment that has different um like just very different conditions from the other places that I had been with the Marine Corps, um and it was really eye-opening having been trained on the East Coast at Paris Island and then getting stationed out on the West Coast in California. Just seeing the differences there was pretty crazy for me, and I'm glad that I got to experience both because um you know, more experience.
Do you remember the major beef between East and West Coast recruits?
Oh, there's always beef, and I think there's always going to be. And like as long as people don't take it too far, I think it's kind of healthy because you kind of need some sort of competition going, at least in my experience, like with the units that I was with, it was always, you're always competing against all of the other Marines. So it's like a little healthy competition is always good for pushing people past where they would be comfortably otherwise, you know?
Yeah, I quit competing after my run-in with Hillary. But for
Are you
anyone
gonna
who
tell
does,
that story?
not on the air. No, it's not gonna be on the air, but I will do it after the show because I know you love that.
I
Uh,
do want you to tell that story because I have retold that story to several people. I feel like it's really illustrative of her personality.
it is fucking insane. But for anyone wondering what the beef is between East Coast and West Coast as a competition, West Coast is done in two places. Um, so phase 1 and phase 3 are primarily done on the recruit depot in San Diego. And then phase 2 is an entire month long, and that's done primarily on Camp Pendleton. And there's about a week in phase 3 in that you go back to Pendleton to complete your training before you are given your Eagle Globe and Anchor and then sent back to the recruit depot on San Diego. But uh, Camp Pendleton is filled with nothing but mountains, or at least the recruit training and the MCT portions of the base are just completely mountainous. And so you have two main mountains throughout those two parts of your Marine Corps career. The one in uh, in Marine Corps boot camp or recruit training is the Reaper. And then the East Coast's claim to fame is Sand Fleas.
Yep, Paris Island sand fleas, those things. And all we also had the bigger problem than the sand fleas when I was a band was the fire ants because they were all
Oh,
over our PT field. So when we, got marched out to work
mm-hmm.
out in the mornings, you have to stay in formation and god forbid, like it happened multiple times where the formation would stop and someone would be standing like in a red ant hill and you're not allowed to move once you stop, so then you're just standing there with these red ants crawling all over you like biting you and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh
that's
my
pretty
god.
rough.
And then eventually the bites turn into things that look like pimples.
Yes,
I'm
yep.
I'm familiar. My first week in Florida, I went to boarding school down here. And we didn't have fire ants where I came from. So I sat down on the ground and got them all the way up my body. And like even getting in the shower wouldn't get those fuckers to stop biting me. I can't believe you guys had to just stand in the pits.
Yeah, it was, and you get like, I think it's like an hour of free time in the evenings, at least when I went through, where you just kind of you get to like write your letters home. You get to like for female Marines, you get to like redo your hair if you want to. You do your laundry, stuff like that. But it's a lot. It's literally just like some free time in the squad bays with all of the people in your platoon. And we used to just be sitting there like writing our letters home, and I would look down and like my arms or my legs or my feet would have it would look like I was like breaking out with like pimples, but it was all just from these ants that were just everywhere every single day whenever we went out to work out.
So I pulled a similar move that you pulled, Haley, and you went from the East Coast to the West Coast for your duty station, and I went from the West Coast to the East Coast for my duty station. So we can both appreciate the differences between the two and just how difficult it was at both depots.
Yeah, I think one thing that like really stood out to me while I was on active duty is like every because there are three main options for duty stations, or four main options, I guess, for duty stations in the Marine Corps, and that's East Coast, West Coast, Japan, and Hawaii. Those are like the four categories I always had in my head. Um, and to me, like, I got to see three out of those four, like, groups of duty stations, and it
Hmm.
always struck me that, like, they were all so individual and they had their own, benefits to being there, and then they had their own, like, difficult conditions that were involved with, like, being stationed in those bases. So it was cool to see, like, the different spread of conditions that people were living in, like, and PTing in and working in on all these different bases and these different areas that we have Marine Corps bases. So I thought that was cool.
Now, one last thing before we get on track. I wanted to ask you about when were you in? Just a year period.
Yeah, so I went to boot camp in 2013, and then I'm still technically on contract. I did active duty for 5 years. I got off in 2018. And then I did about a year and a half in the inactive reserves, which is something that all military members do during their first contract. And then about a year and a half in, I started getting an itch, and a recruiter just contacted me at the right time, a prior service recruiter. And then I ended up going back in and doing reserves from 2020 to August of this year. So I just checked out from my unit a couple months ago.
That's interesting. I had gotten the itch about 2 years after I got out, and uh, ah, honestly, after all of the fuck games that I had to play, I will never go back. Uh,
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling now. But but I wanted to give the reserves a try because um I was never obligated in the reserves, which meant that I was basically volunteering to be a part of a unit, and if at any point I wanted to just check out and be done with it and drop back to the IRR, which is the inactive reserves where you're not expected to drill,
yep.
I had that option, and that's the only reason that I was willing to go back, because I wanted to see what the was about, and I knew that I would always have that option to leave if it wasn't, you know, doing anything for me, and that's ultimately the decision that I came to in August. So I still have a year on contract. I don't think I'll go back, but it is an option for me right now. So we'll see. Maybe the itch might come back, but who knows?
I'm hoping it doesn't. But for anyone wondering, there are three types of duty. There is the active duty. Well, there's four types actually. There's active duty, active reserves, select reserves, and then individual ready reserves. Individual ready reserves, you don't drill, you don't do jack squat. You're just on contract, so if they need bodies, they can call you back.
I
Um,
used to live with a guy that had been in the Navy, and then he joined the Air Force, and then he went for some reason to the fucking Army. And when I met him, was a volunteer firefighter. Interesting fella, hated kids.
Some people do that. Some people jump branches, and it was honestly never anything that I ever considered, because you can't go anywhere from the top, you know. But yeah, there are some people that do jump branches like that, and there are reasons to do it depending on where you want your career to go. But some people literally were just like, "Oh, I just want to do an enlistment in each branch to say that I did." And I thought that was a wild mindset to have.
that's an
I don't
extremely
think
wild
that's why
mindset to
he did
have.
it. But also, I might be messing up the order of what he did. I know that he was a medic once. Like, saving people is very important to him. As long as it wasn't a small child that was going to get their sticky hands on him afterwards.
Okay. If the two that just joined would be so kind as to put into the chat how they would like to be addressed, I will get them introduced. But while we're waiting on that, let's go ahead and switch gears on topic. Since I'm certain most of us are ADHD as fuck. And oh, okay, so she'll just be listening. And we will move on to Nick Fuentes. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Nick was arrested on November 27th, day before Thanksgiving. Does anyone need a refresher on what happened that got him arrested?
Yes, I do, please.
Okay.
Please.
So, Nick Fuentes lives in Chicago and had recently been doxxed as of the time of this video that's playing on the screen. And a few people had started scoping out his address, and one of them went up to his door after she had seen him come home, rung his doorbell, and he opened his door and pepper sprayed her. Now, there's some use of force issues here that I'll get into because as Liz knows, I speak heavily about use of force. I am a huge advocate for the Second Amendment, not specifically because I like the government, but because I recognize that we live in a universe that is constantly at odds with life itself, and we have a natural born right to defend ourselves from anything that would want to take our lives or would threaten our lives. If that means that I have to use a gun, if that means I have to use a gravity generator, I don't care. I'm going to use whatever I can to protect my life. With that, some of the rhetoric that has come out surrounding this is fucking glorious, including Tim Pool's take on this. Tim Pool decided that he was going to say that it was stupid for Chicago to arrest and charge Nick Fuentes, and I think that he is dead wrong. Now,
Me too.
I'm not denying the fact that there is a likelihood that a jury could acquit him, but knowing use of force the way I do, I don't think a reasonable jury would acquit.
I don't think as a society we should be letting men pepper spray people because they're such fucking cowards. They can't ask why somebody's at their door.
Well,
As-
go ahead.
Okay, to be fair, it's Timpo. I don't think he's ever been right. He was found out, if you remember, being paid upwards of 100,000 for spreading propaganda.
Oh yes, Tim Pool is a Russian asset. We know that.
Yeah,
We should have
obviously.
mentioned. Yes.
But I'm just saying, I don't think he's ever been right. So obviously he'll side with Nick Fuentes, the neo-Nazi in this case, instead of actually considering that he might have been arrested for harassing someone for no reason.
I used to like Tim Pool. My problem with him stems from the fact that everything that he talks about revolves around civil war. He is constantly talking about civil war. It's a fucking meme at this point. You cannot get through one of his IRL streams without him talking about civil war.
Why is he so obsessed with it? Aside from the fact he's probably getting paid to do it, but obviously. Is it like an ideological thing, I wonder?
It's
If America was fighting itself, that would certainly be beneficial to Russia.
Okay, obviously, but I mean, is it like a actual ideological thing, or is it just saying it out of
it's
nowhere?
it's it's a culture war thing, and the culture war isn't really the culture war anymore. It's the tyrant war. Who can be more tyrannical at this point? Because coming from someone who has voted both Democrat and Republican and did so for, let's see, 16 years. So I voted for Obama in 2008, voted for Obama in 2012, voted for Trump in 2016, voted for Trump in 2020, and this year I didn't vote at all. And part of that is because I don't see his use towards any sort of anarchist system anymore.
I do want to remind people that when somebody tells you in a reasonable way about their political beliefs, that we should be questioning and open.
Yes, absolutely. Um,
Okay.
it's I've never held a secret about who I've voted for in the past, simply because my priority, especially the past 8 years, has always been advancing an anarchist agenda. And so seeing people freaking out on both sides of the aisle about a Trump presidency, I thought, hey, might as well go ahead and, you know, bring down the system by a bull in a china shop, which is kind of what he did, but not really. And so I said, screw it, I'm not voting for him this year, which I did not.
I think that and sorry to hijack and transition over
Yeah.
to a different part of the conversation, but the killing of this CEO has brought out a cross sectionality of America that I've been trying to point out to people that exists. That's hard to look at, because I think that there's a very comforting view that everybody who voted for Trump did it for X, Y, and Z reasons. But if we look at how we're celebrating somebody fighting back against the system, and then we turn around and we really look at how many people we've all lost through the U.S. government and its control over our lives. I've talked in chat about how I lost my best friend about 5 years ago to a treatable health condition that she couldn't afford because the insurance company wouldn't pick up some of the cost of her medication.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are still in a part of the system where it is comfortable enough for you, you may not have been able to see that it is not comfortable enough for everybody else, and that a lot of people do have very good reasons to want to completely crush the system, even if I personally find it uncomfortable and I don't like it. I also
Well,
I need it to change for my little girl. She can't grow up like this. She needs to have a future.
absolutely. I mean, when I got out of the Marine Corps, the options that the Marine Corps gave me for insurance, because I was married at the time, were a $1,200 a month premium for healthcare through TRICARE. That's fucking ridiculous.
I
$1,200 a
pay
month?
Yeah. I pay what I think is a ridiculous amount of money, and it's not anywhere near that.
Well, through my current employer, this is the first time, this year was the first time I have had insurance since 2014, and I pay $120 directly out of my paycheck every week. But most of that goes into not just medical, but also into vision, dental, and a health savings account.
I get frustrated with taxes. When I lived in Pennsylvania, I didn't mind the taxes I paid as much because there was a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm here in Florida, I don't like, what are my taxes going for that really benefit me is kind of a question that's in my head a lot for the amount that still gets taken out of my paycheck by the federal government. I really do think about like what in that is going towards my daughter and myself, and like especially when there's talks about like privatizing education, which is, in my opinion, like the worst fucking idea.
The answer to that question is absolutely nothing. The federal
For
government,
me,
huh?
If you would allow me to share my opinion on the healthcare situation,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, please.
I think the general issue is that it's not just insurance, it's the fact that healthcare itself is privatized. And you cannot really fix it without, you know, doing something even. The whole system is itself based around the fact that it assumes you have insurance, which is why they charge that much, correct?
Yeah.
But the issue is that without insurance, this means that it would crumble, essentially because it's already expecting that money. So the real issue is that they're all collaborating to make it worse. And you're never
There's
going to get.
also there's
Yeah,
also the
sorry.
important thing that the government is also involved in some areas, and so there's what companies see as free money from the government on the table to rise
Mm-hmm.
their price. Like for example, if you go to the dentist here and you go with and without insurance, you almost end up paying the same price no matter what. Because if you don't have insurance, they discount it, and if you do have insurance, I don't know where that money goes, but they seem to ask you to pay the same amount.
Well, basically the way this works is, well, first the government gets involved, and the government is notorious for fucking shit up. And then when insurance gets involved, the way that works is insurance says we're not going to pay. The provider says, well, we need you to pay something. And so then they negotiate back and forth, and all of that just runs up the cost because you have to have someone on the phone with the insurance company for hours upon hours each day, which just drives up the bill. It's fucking ridiculous. That was one thing that Trump had brought up that was a fair fucking point. It's also something that Bernie brought up both times that he ran, both in 2016 and 2020. Insurance and providers just run up costs because they're too busy bickering back and forth and running up costs.
And
Yes.
it's an unnecessary like middle step too. Like I just I don't see why we would go through an insurance. It just seems like an unnecessary middleman to me in a
It's
lot of ways.
maddening. Living in this system it's maddening. Trying to get mental health care in this environment is maddening. I have PTSD. I was adopted at 3.5. I have every single fucking check mark for why I would have PTSD. And I have never, until I'm sorry, I should say, I finally managed to get a diagnosis for it. In my late 30s, finally, just because everybody wants to go, oh, anxiety disorder, come in X amount of times per week and we'll give you this prescription, and then we get, and like, that's what your insurance will cover, instead of like anybody seeing me as an actual person and like listening to my condition and my symptoms. I am whatever is easiest to stick into the box to get money out of.
Yeah, absolutely.
What what gets me is that, like, as like, with where we are in human history, with as advanced as humans are today, with our medicine and our society as a whole, why would we ever put ourselves in a situation where, like, medical research and medical discoveries happened through collective research over generations. It's something that, many people contributed to. And so, like, if you're looking at it from like a societal viewpoint, like, we as a society came together to develop these medicines and these therapies and these procedures and operations and stuff. Why would everyone not have the right to take part in getting that medicine to benefit from that? Why would we ever limit only some people who have a certain amount of money or who work for the right people that give them the right insurance? Only they get to get this medicine and they get to reap the benefits of this collective action that we as a society have done to get to this point where the medicine is available. Why do they get to benefit and other people don't? It doesn't make sense to me.
Insider trading, kickbacks.
Um, it's funny that a lot of people don't seem to realize that we just recreated the nobility over here. Like, we came over to the
Oh
United
yeah.
States and we're like, we're gonna do it differently. And then now we've got our stupid little political lords and ladies that, like, they come part of the political class and they're not of the people anymore and they don't represent us. And like, it's starting to get very frustrating because I no longer believe that people can represent other people adequately. I think that when everything is so convoluted, that the best that you can get out of people is for them to represent themselves. And Erica, you and I have talked about democratic lotteries before, and that's part
Mm-hmm.
of why I think it just makes more sense than voting, because instead of asking somebody to pretend that they're not a self-interested person and go learn how to be a politician, we could just have people stand up and like talk about what it is that they need and like vote in their own self-interest on things in like a committee form and then move from there, and then it'd be honest at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I wanted to bring up. Uh, I actually wanted to shift back to Nick Fuentes.
Oh no, I'm
Um,
happy to. We didn't give him enough shit. Let's go back.
no, that's absolutely fine. We're just all fucking ADHD. It happens. I don't care. Um,
The train
so
the train derails very easily.
Yeah,
yes, yes, it does. So
and we're fun people that talk about fun things.
so
Sure.
when it comes to Nick Fuentes, he's got two things against him. One, he's living in Illinois. Two, he's living in Chicago. But even if he was living in a red area in a red state, what he did still does not qualify as justifiable force. Um, Haley, do you remember any of your time learning what is justifiable force while you were in the Marine Corps?
Um, I understand the concepts, but I couldn't point to a specific time where I was taught about it.
Okay.
So maybe if you do, that would be you would be the
No,
one to take that one.
no, that's absolutely fine. When it comes to justifiable force in a civilian situation, you've got a few different doctrines. You've got the stand your ground doctrine and you've got castle doctrine. Stand your ground happens outside of your home. and castle doctrine happens inside of your home or around the curtilage of your home. Now, when you are inside your house, it is specifically inside your home. And the only state in which castle doctrine does not apply only inside of your home is in Texas, where you can also protect property that is on, like your car, on your property outside of your home, but on your property. So the way castle doctrine works in pretty much every state except for New Jersey and a couple duty to retreat states, is someone has to be using physical force and get through the door before you can use force. And the reason why is because they have demonstrated the willingness to use deadly force, or it is presumed in a court that they were willing to use deadly force by breaking in the door or breaking through a window. You are only justified in using physical force once they come through, like once they open that door. You cannot open a door and shoot someone on your front doorstep. You cannot open your door and pepper spray someone on your front doorstep, because that falls under another legal doctrine called what is it? License to use, or free license to use. And cops use this often. It's called a knock and talk. Who's heard of knock and talk? Liz?
Yeah, no, I was muted and talking to you.
Okay. So, you know what a knock and talk is. Cops walk up to your front door, knock, and ask you to open your door so that they can talk to you face to face. The legal doctrine is basically, as long as it's open to the public, someone can walk up to your front door and knock on your front door, try to get you to talk to them until you revoke license for them to be on your property. Which is why doorbell cameras are so fucking ingenious, because you don't even have to open the door to revoke license to people being on your property. You can just do it through a fucking microphone and camera.
It makes sense that it's illegal to assault people on your porch. Otherwise, Jehovah's Witnesses probably wouldn't still be a thing.
Yeah, well, and that's the funny thing. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I did that for several years when I was a kid.
I was wondering if you were going to take me up on saying that.
Yes, I am going to take you up on saying that, because there are several legal doctrines that exist because of Jehovah's Witnesses. To include the legal doctrine that gave Tinker in Tinker v. West Des Moines its outcome in the Supreme Court, and most other free speech cases in the past century, the right decisions.
Erica, you're halfway to being a lawyer.
Well, I'm past that, but I don't want to be a lawyer because I don't want to be part of the system again.
I was wondering, because don't get me wrong, I read a lot of legal stuff, but I can't cite court cases. That's impressive.
This is generally the one I refer to is Barnett versus West Virginia State Board of Education. It was decided in 1943, coincidentally, during World War II, and it overthrew a court case from just 5 years prior that had come up in front of the Supreme Court. I cannot remember the case. off the top of my head, but it surrounded the right to not stand and not pledge allegiance whenever the national anthem came on.
Oh, I remember
And,
that case.
yeah, that those were two cases, both in the similar vein. And what happened in between those two cases being seen by the Supreme Court was there were public lynchings of people that did not stand for the national anthem because there was this huge belief that they were fascists or communists that had come to overthrow the state. But it was
Which
based
is
on,
crazy.
yeah, there were public lynchings, there were shootings, in between 1938 and 1943, and 7 or 8 of the 9 justices that had originally voted in the 1938 case to make it illegal to not stand for the national anthem or not pledge allegiance reversed their decision. And in that time, another justice had come on the court, and he swayed everyone but the one Jewish guy that was on the court into saying, no, it's not okay. We cannot force patriotism. We cannot force people to stand for the national anthem. We can't force them to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The one Jewish guy on the court at the time dissented and said, this is nothing like what we're seeing over in Germany, because they're killing people or the state is killing people for not pledging to the Nazi flag and the Nazi government.
What was his deal? Was he like the Clarence Thomas of his time?
I say Clarence Thomas gets a pass from me simply because of his few decisions on 2A. But I don't know. I honestly don't know what this specific Supreme Court justice was thinking, because everyone was telling him it doesn't matter if it's the government or it's the citizens that are putting people to death. People are being put to death.
It's a slippery slope, and it almost seems like sometimes with these big Supreme Court cases, it seems like they almost miss the forest for the trees with their decisions, where it's like the whole idea behind America is not forcing people to live any one particular way, like whether or not that's ever been the case, like that's the idea that we're selling people, so maybe we should back it up for once, maybe.
Perhaps.
Nothing we do matches our marketing material.
I've read so many Supreme Court cases, or so many decisions by the Supreme Court, and most decisions over the past century that have come out of the Supreme Court have been unanimous. We're talking less than 1% of every case, or of all cases of each year that have come out over the past century, have had any sort of opposition to the majority ruling. In the past century, the only major splits in the court have been over 3 things: free speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and abortion. Those are the 3 main splits that have ever been seen in the court in the past century. And we still see them today. So, of course, back to Nick. When it comes to what he did, it is not justifiable force, but I have seen so many people in the 2A community saying, oh, but it was reasonable because he had been doxxed. No.
That's not reasonable.
And then
like, she legitimately could have been a neighbor coming over to tell him about something happening next week.
Yeah, well,
I
and
was
then
gonna say, because you can see from this video that he doesn't even like take the time to look and see who it is, doesn't take the time to say a word. It's literally just door open, bam.
Yeah, there's no
sprayed,
threat
like,
assessment time. Like, it cannot be legal
no.
to not even assess the threat and attack somebody. Otherwise, people would be attacking Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like the guy had the time to make an ORM. But you don't really have to make one of those when someone's knocking at your fucking door.
What's an ORM?
Operational Risk Management Assessment.
Gotcha, thank you. Excuse me, the hound's going off.
No,
Okay,
what?
So wait, do we know his like actual motives? Did he actually fear someone who knew about his doxing, or did he just want to assault someone? Because he would do that. Let's be honest.
I think the only thing he would be able to hide behind when it came to his court case is the fact that he was doxxed. That would put reasonable fear into a person. I mean, I was doxxed back in 2022 by a person on TikTok just before my daughter visited. And there were threats against my life and threats against her life. To the point where I sent her to stay with my parents when she was visiting.
Now, hold on a second. Are you saying that in your fear, you made reasonable accommodations to not be in danger based on that instead of assaulting people at your front door?
Well, I made reasonable accommodations so that my daughter wouldn't be in the path of danger. But you know me, I'm armed to the teeth.
Well, I would assume that your reasonable accommodation was arming yourself.
Yes, my reasonable accommodation is arming myself, and I know use of force. I know what is legal and what is not. I'm going to wait for someone to bust through one of the two doors in the house before I open fire. That's when it's reasonable to open fire. It's not reasonable to open your door and pepper spray someone.
No, and it's also a slippery slope from there as far as other people seeing this and maybe taking it further than pepper spray too.
You know, and I've been cruelly picking on Jehovah's Witnesses when it could be like any person delivering a package, or
It could be
like
Mormons.
there's so many people who come up to your day or door in modern life that are like just doing their damn jobs.
Well, and you know, considering the day and age that we live in, and looking at specifically looking at Nick, why the fuck doesn't he have a front door camera, like a doorbell camera? He's got a bunch of doorbells, but no camera there.
It actually makes
Wait,
no sense. He has
maybe
money as
he
well.
does have a camera though, and that's why he came out and attacked her, because he was like, "Why is there a woman at my door? I recently threatened every woman in America."
There it is. There is no camera.
I don't know if he would have no camera. It's not like he's poor at all.
Yeah, it does surprise me considering You know, it's not like he's new to being known across America, and it's not like he's new to being known specifically as a person with questionable, controversial beliefs. So it does surprise me that he wouldn't even bother to take the most basic of steps for
Yeah, maybe
security.
maybe just that he forgot. Literally, I would not doubt him for that.
Really do hope the court isn't like, it's not our job to babysit you, and like if you're gonna piss everybody on the internet off at you, you don't get to attack people just because you got scared from the reaction. I don't know, because like the entire thing is just him being a jackass all the way through. And I'm not saying we should put people in jail for being jackasses, but like maybe a large fine or something.
No, we can't find people for being jackasses, otherwise I'd be destitute. Come on. This is like the trademark of being a Marine, especially a Marine that came through as male through their entire fucking career. I'm an asshole.
What about jackass retraining? No, but assholes are different. I'm not talking about. Look,
Oh,
there's a
okay.
difference between being a
Oh
jackass
no,
and an asshole.
we're
Okay.
jackasses too. We're
In
jackasses too. Don't
yeah,
get it twisted. We are assholes, but we are also jackasses. It's not like they're not separate things for
the
Marines.
stupid shit I have seen Marines do would astonish any average American.
The amount of time that I as an adult have spent of my life sitting in the woods or in the wilderness somewhere throwing rocks at things would
I
shock
believe it.
anyone who's not been in the military. That's how we
I used to,
would regularly entertain ourselves.
I used to play video games with a bunch of guys from the Navy. And like, first of all, I don't know why that happened. And second of all, I got the impression that the armed forces was a hotbed of jackassery. So I should have understood that there were jackasses in the company.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
especially in the Marines, because we get double the fuckery. I mean, have if you've met a Marine, you've met the straightest gay man alive.
No, that seems accurate.
Yeah, we beat like low key like we kind of got the Navy beat. I'm not gonna lie.
And we used to make jokes, especially when I was in school, about how the Navy was so gay. But here I am sitting in class in comm school playing gay chicken.
Gay chicken.
I actually went to a wedding with recently with other military members, specifically from the army, because the bride and the groom were both army.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a whole topic of the night, was like, because some of my other friends that were there were civilians. So between the soldiers from the army and then myself as a Marine, we were like trying to explain it to my civilian friends, and it's hard to explain the ridiculousness of Marines to people who haven't like witnessed it themselves, because it sounds unbelievable. You wouldn't think a group of grown adults would behave the way that we do, but it's something about it, man. You get us together and we just get going and stupid shit happens.
There's a reason why the Air Force gets hazard pay when they're stationed with Marines.
Yes, there is. Justifiably. They get the most shit.
What are we
Okay,
talking
so
about?
jackassery of Marines. But we are
No, I
since
think we were talking about Nick Fuentes.
yeah. But because we're supposed to be on the topic of Nick Fuentes, I'm going to transition to what led up to all of this. And it's a recent tweet after the election back in November that cued off all of the 4B bullshit, all of the all of the discussions about abortion. Give me 1 second.
Okay, wait. I thought the 4B stuff was after Trump won specifically.
It
instead of-
was,
because
The
which
4B movement actually started picking up steam in America at least 6 months ago. Before that, it's just
I don't
that was the push that made women that hadn't been thinking about not dating men go, maybe I shouldn't.
yeah,
honestly,
go ahead.
honestly, my hope is that it survives somehow. It doesn't become like the original 4B movement, which is, I know, from Asia. And that one is because it's insanely transphobic, I should mention.
I
The original
personally,
4B movement is insanely transphobic, so I don't want to actually mention that. I hope it doesn't actually become a feature of Western 4B.
so the server that you're in is it's primarily a server of women that are decentering men, and it's not like it's 4B adjacent, except for I think that the majority of us just agree that we would like to just center other women in our life. We'd like to do charities with other women. We would like to do mutual aid with other women. We would like to organize with other women and just pour our energies into other women and let men figure out their own shit for a while.
Yeah, okay, but I'm just saying that I really hope the transphobia doesn't actually get imported. I hope it just stays
Absolutely.
the centering men thing.
Well,
you know?
and
No, and the
part of it-
transphobia has been an issue in some of them. I think that the 4B subreddit I've heard has issues with it. Anyway,
I'm just hoping there's
we
no
screen
widespread
in this
issue.
community. Yeah, me too. Like transphobia is like really scarily taking off in America, and I think when I first saw like J.K. Rowling and her following, for some reason, I don't know, maybe it was the American exceptionalism, but I just didn't think that you could get Americans to care enough about trans people when they like literally couldn't see them in their daily lives very often, enough to care as much as they even do right now.
well, and 4B, at least in my eyes, didn't actually blow up in the U.S. until just after the election, when Nick Fuentes made his famous post of "Your Body, My Choice," which is the next topic that we're talking about.
It's like a far right thing that actually was just like unfortunate or something before he just stated that outright. Did he actually start it? I'm not
Um,
aware.
Tweet was his, yes.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
He's
it's
the one.
like
He's
if like he actually started the sentiment, because I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound like something that already have before the election, just kind of emboldened them to say it? I don't know.
it was definitely like not something that was ever like explicitly expressed. And then he went and
Okay.
opened that can of worms right after the election.
So Naomi said, "I think that 4B is a good idea as a trans woman. It would be unfortunate if transphobia took off in the American version, but I honestly hope it succeeds." I I personally have mixed feelings about 4B, but it doesn't it honestly doesn't matter at this point what my feelings are about it. But the the idea behind "Your Body, My Choice" translates well to TERFs and gender criticals.
This is what gets me about this whole conversation, that people who are pro-life don't seem to take into account. I mentioned it in one of the chats recently, but the the way laws work, at least in America, is it's not as specific as women and men or trans and cis people. It's, can the government have an opinion about a medical procedure or, some type of health care, and can their opinion supersede the individual and the individual's doctor in deciding whether or not that person can get that health care? And
Uh,
that's a slippery slope to go
mm-hmm.
down for any of us, because once that decision's made, if they decide, yes, we can tell trans people whether or not they can transition, or we can tell a woman whether or not she can get an abortion, that's the government saying, we get to make decisions about an individual's health care. And that applies to everyone, whether or not the specific procedures in question apply to you.
Yeah.
So pisses me off on a fundamental level of like, first of all, is this even fucking America? And second of all, bitch, no, you don't get to make decisions about my healthcare if you're not fucking paying for it, okay? Like, if the government wants to step in and tell me whether or not I can transition, then they need to be the ones that are paying for my healthcare. Like, it is absolute bullshit that the government is going to be like, you are paying out of pocket for this, out of your own money, you are paying for this, but we can tell you that you can't do that. Again, I go back to point A. Is this even fucking America? Like, you can get a boob job at 16 and get the biggest set of titties you want if you are a girl. Like, why are we being sexist and preventing boys from having this joy if that's how you see it? Not saying that trans people are boys. I'm just saying that it is absolutely ridiculous that the government is trying to get involved here.
I
Right, like this actually about mastectomies. They barely give them to trans men all the time, while they like hand them out really easily to cis women who need it. Which is obviously good. It's like a healthcare procedure that is needed often to remove some like breast cancer. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely very biased
so
always, especially with
I've
surgeries.
I've had some issues concerning government involvement in healthcare, especially when it comes to trans people. Obviously, because I'm trans, but uh, Liz brought up a good point. If you're not paying for it, you don't get a say in it.
That's
And
right. If you're not my daddy, you don't get to tell me how to spend my money.
that's part of the
Not to be a
reason why
brat, but
that's part of the reason why I'm what I call a begrudgingly pro-choice advocate. I don't like abortion, but it's not my decision to make. It's whoever's carrying the child. Uh, Honestly, I still believe that it's still a living person, maybe not fully aware of itself at the time, but I don't get to make that fucking choice.
no notes.
The other way that you can look at this too, to even extend the idea further, is if the government can tell you, no, you can't get this healthcare procedure, it's not too far of a jump for the government to say, okay, well, now we're telling you you do have to get this other healthcare procedure that you might not want to get.
Uh-huh.
The government has a history of, forced sterilization of people that they felt weren't deserving of, having kids. And like that, anytime that the government is given the ability to make healthcare decisions, it works both ways, and people don't seem to
Lobotomies
understand.
too.
And
Like
Yep.
lobotomies.
the only true time that they get to make those sorts of medical decisions is if you voluntarily signed a contract to join the military. That is the only time. Because you signed over your personal rights to your body when you joined the government.
Okay, I don't want to say though, even if this like, even if the government is paying for healthcare, it still shouldn't be acceptable to ban objectively life-saving procedures. Like, for example, what the
No,
UK did.
it just
Yeah,
adds a fence.
technically, the NHS is funding most of it unless you're going private, but that still doesn't mean that you should disregard the advocacy groups that were actually invited, which even when they invited literally the most transphobic groups, they still voted mostly against somehow. And also the Global School of Bankers, that was funny. But I mean, my point is more, you shouldn't be banning it anyway, even if the government is paying for it.
No.
100%. It's just salt in the wound. That was all I was saying. Like, it's salt in the wound, like they shouldn't be doing in the first place. And also, do you guys remember, like, when they were passing Obamacare, how freaked out people were about these supposed death panels? But suddenly, if it's me and my life-saving abortion, I have to, like, get a fucking lawyer to prove that it's life-threatening enough for the doctor to actually, like, do the procedure? So there's death panels for me of, like, all these people I gotta go through?
Well, the issue that I see stems from Canada, and it's a meme in the vet community. As of the past couple of years, they had a veteran in Canada who was having mental issues, and their answer to this veteran was basically, "Oh, have you thought about euthanization?"
What?
Yeah, the Canadian healthcare system, when he was asking for help and they wouldn't give him help, they said, "Oh, by the way, have you considered self-deleting? Have you considered government-funded euthanization?"
Do you
Actually,
remember in Futurama the boxes in the episodes that
Uh-huh.
helped you self-delete? We're like how far away are we from that?
I
I
don't
should
think we're.
mention, by the way,
Hmm.
they also do it to disabled people a lot. So it isn't just veterans; they just do it to anyone who they don't really want to
Oh,
support.
yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying that it's only veterans, but it's become a meme within the veteran community.
Okay,
Um,
I'm just saying they also do it to them, just pointing it out. Sorry, I
yeah,
didn't mean to say that you were
and
implying that it's only done to veterans.
yeah, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to opt into self-deletion. It should be an option for people who are suffering. It should be an option for people who believe that, they just cannot go on. Oh, hey, look at that. We've got a comment. Unfortunately, in today's world, when I speak up for workers' rights, I get called a Transtifa activist. Political climate is basically a swamp now, in my opinion. Rough times, and that is the Flexit Tech or Flexi Tech. Thank you for the comment. Naomi said suicide booths. That's the thing in Futurama. Yes, it is. Um, but no, when it comes to self-deletion, people who are so far beyond being able to help, they should have that choice. I don't have a problem with people wanting to take the out.
I agree with that. I just don't think that you should be able to walk in and do it easily. Like, you should get counseling first.
I agree. And if you live in a government where you get public health care and, you don't have to pay for shit, hey, give them counseling before you agree to delete them. Don't just suggest that off the bat.
Right. Yeah, there should be like at least 3 visits. Like I had a friend in my early 20s that had like really bad schizophrenia and all of the medications just like didn't work. And she did eventually take her own life. And I remember thinking that like in a just world, somebody like that who just like couldn't find peace, like she should have been able to like go in for help. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like she just
I'm a
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like people have the right to have like dignity in death. And if you're at that point, like I don't see I don't see a problem with that being an option. And I've read about some of the countries in Europe that have programs for like euthanasia and stuff in some cases, and it seems like, at least from the countries that I've read, over there the bars are pretty high. Like it would be like a couple years worth of appointments to make sure you're like medically or mentally like understanding what the choice is. And like there are a lot of steps, at least from what I've read, in some of the countries over in Europe before they'll get to a point where they would approve you for a procedure like that. And honestly, I think that's how it should be. It's crazy to me to hear that Canada would be so like almost like flippant with it.
Yeah.
It very much depends on where you are in Europe. I don't know who specifically offers it, I assume. Certain places.
Yeah, I was
I
just
think
referring to, I know some of the countries over there have it legalized, and those were where those were the countries where these stories were coming from that I've read personally, where it's done in this one way.
The UK
Honest,
recently legalized it, actually.
I just
honestly,
think that we should treat ourselves as well as we treat our pets.
oh yeah.
When my dog eventually is starting to really struggle and I have to make the decision, I know that she'll peacefully slip away. And it's kind of like that's a comfort to me. Like, and because she's only 2 years old now, but like, it's a comfort to me knowing that we are so humane with our pets. And I just wish that we were as humane with each other.
Well, and I've got a 16-year-old pit bull that is on her way out, and same goes for her. We actually have an entire plan of what's going to happen on her last day. She's going to get all of the stuff that she can't actually eat and digest,
Hmm.
because we want her to have a good last day, and
See,
then
that
just
makes it special. For like an alternate perspective, during COVID, I worked in home health care with elderly patients,
mhm.
and um, it was tough because a lot of the time it felt like these people are almost being forced to hold on. I had multiple patients that told me like they didn't, they're old enough, they didn't want to be here anymore, but like for whatever reason, just because they are human, they're being, pumped full of these medications, and their lives are being extended years and years later than they would have naturally been able to, survive. And a lot of the times they're done with it too. They want that option, and they should have that option to go out in a loving and like caring sort of way, rather than just waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know?
Yeah, go out with dignity.
Exactly.
I'm a
I
huge believer in and then I also think that if you are in prison for life and like you are okay with it, this isn't something that I think you should ever force on people. And you wanted to, instead of serving out your sentence, simply exit the earth. I think that we should let people do that because I kind of think keeping people in a cage for their entire life is just as fucked up as almost anything that you could do to another person to end up in that cage. That's
voluntary
not
death
what.
voluntary death penalty.
Yeah, yes, like an opt into it. Like I said, like you can't. I'm not about killing people who want to live, but like I definitely have heard from people who were spending life in prison before that if they could opt into something peaceful like what we do for dogs, that they would do that. And like I don't know, and maybe we shouldn't be killing prisoners in like a really fucked up way too.
Well, I mean,
We've got lots of rooms for improvement.
yeah, well, you've heard my spiel on, I don't believe the government should be able to hand out the death penalty on a conviction ever. I just I just don't believe there could ever be uh, a conviction that's based upon a belief beyond a reasonable doubt. I believe, it's just nearly impossible for the government to dispel with all doubts.
It's also just dangerous for governments to even have the option to, because it doesn't take too much before they start saying, oh, well, this person belongs to a problematic demographic in some way. So like let's throw the book at them. It's a slippery slope.
Well, I mean, look at how many prisoners have been released after 40 or 50 years just recently because new evidence has finally come to light that exonerates the people who were convicted, that were on death row. I mean,
Yeah,
it
it's
just
the government.
it just
I do
happened
want to
in
clearly
Michigan.
state.
Go ahead, Liz.
Sorry, I do want to say that I am like against the death penalty, and I don't know if that came off in what I said. And that
Yes.
worried me. Like I'm very against the death penalty. Like the government should not be putting people down. What the fuck?
It came out exactly how you wanted it to.
Okay.
No, I
the
was
whole business of keeping my fellow man in cages disgusts me. And whenever I try to talk about this subject, I recognize that like I am so vehemently anti-prisons that if I come at it as fully in the face as I want to, people are usually like, oh, but we need to have a place to keep the rapist and stuff. And I'm like, I still don't think it's humane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also like really anti-prison. I just never say it for this reason. It's like an argument that never ends. They're never going to let you actually, speak on it and win.
Yes. Like I definitely
Exactly.
feel like people who are pro prison are not going to let you get away with being like, yeah, but it's wrong.
Yeah, I think torturing people is wrong. That's what happens in prisons. It's
you know my position on when it comes to rapists, pedophiles, things of that sort. If you catch them in the act, just shoot them.
Amen.
Yeah, I support that.
Just pull out the wood chipper and be done with them.
sure sounds.
If someone gets to that point, they statistically are very unlikely to ever be a redeemable person from there.
Yeah, it doesn't work from a deterrent perspective, but it does work from the perspective of sexual offenders reoffend. Like,
yeah,
100%.
They do not get better. The recidivism rate is crazy compared to almost like every other crime.
Yeah, but that's also the reason why I am so pro-gun, especially when it comes to women. If you are afraid of being sexually assaulted, carry a gun.
A lot of our members actually in the chat have been talking recently about arming themselves. There's been, men online have gotten very comfortable saying things that used to get the shit beaten out of you if you said mixed company. Like there are some things that we used to as a society just not let men say. And I'm not saying that I'm against free speech, but I also think that social media platforms should offer an experience for women that's tailored to them, where if men want to hang around women, then they have to agree that they're not allowed to say things like, actually, I think I should legally be allowed to rape you because what's the real harm?
Right, but I don't think such an experience exists, unfortunately.
Fucking needs to, because I am sick of hanging around men saying things unapologetically and getting away from it. Your account should immediately get suspended if you say things that are terroristic towards women.
Yeah, but they always get away with it because most of social media just doesn't care. And I don't know if we have like a social platform that's actually just like this, but I don't think we do, sadly. I know
I
I'm not
used
counting like the
to
turf ones.
I used to moderate Reddit like back in like the default mod days, and a disturbing amount of conversations that I have had with admins where they have told me that what I would qualify as hate speech against women is actually men's free speech, and they're just allowed to talk the way that they do. Um, and then like there's been times where I've been like, now like if they were saying that about a black person in slavery, right? For example, because I'd been talking to a guy who had informed me that he thinks it should be legally allowed for him to beat his wife, uh, and that's not like that's considered just like totally fine speech. And if like if you say to like a black person like no, it should be totally allowed to enslave you on Reddit, though, like people are like that sounds wrong, or like if you switch any other group with a historical wrong against them, like Reddit's like oh we should take down that post. But when it's women, it's fair game. Like it's totally okay to be misogynistic and hateful towards women.
So the
In my
Flexi Tech.
experience currently, like
Sorry.
Reddit has a really bad time moderating two types of bigotry, especially. One is misogyny, as you said, and the other one is transphobia. For some reason, you can like report the most misogynistic or like the most transphobic comment, and it will never get removed. But
I
if you
believe
say
you
anything
100%.
against men, if you say anything against men, they will still remove it, sometimes for being hateful for some reason. But then again, I definitely just don't have like all the good experiences with Reddit SEO. So
Well,
maybe it's just me. Who knows?
that's generally because Elon Musk has a trans daughter that he does not acknowledge as being alive.
Okay, how does
Hmm.
Elon Musk affect Reddit though? He owns Twitter, not Reddit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were
Oh,
talking
good.
about Twitter.
Oh no,
No, so
on Twitter, literally, just if you could just say like any slur against trans people, but if you say says your post is limited because that's apparently more of a slur than things I will not say because
it's
they're
because
slurs and not say slurs. Sorry,
in
sorry.
in order to understand any moderation policy on Twitter, you have to understand what's going on in Elon's personal life, and that's why he's a
True.
shit person at his job. But Reddit is like I don't understand because in like the deep, so the admins used to hang out with like the moderators a lot more. And in that community, there were several respected trans members. So it's not like I can't say that like the core of Reddit didn't have like transgender people who were just accepted as who they were back then. I don't know when transphobia frankly started to become acceptable. For a while there, it was taken more seriously than misogyny. I mean, not very long. It was a short period, but like there was a little bit where if I said something about somebody being transphobic, people actually gave a shit.
Like, and now it's like I can go into like full on turf posts and they never get terminated because Reddit admins are like awful in actually detecting transphobia, I've noticed. Obviously, if you moderate a subreddit, you can like write them a custom response, but otherwise they don't actually let you write anything. You just have to hope they understand why you believe this is transphobic. And if it's
And
just shut
sorry,
up, whisper or something, they're not going to understand. They're definitely not
no,
going to
you
understand.
have to explain shit to them. I
Yeah, but you don't always get that box to explain stuff. That's the issue, right? Unless you bought a subreddit. But at that point, you can just ban the transphobe as well. So at that point, just chasing them off Reddit by going to the admins.
One of the questions I get asked about this server a lot is people will notice that it was created quite a while ago and it had nobody in it, and it's because um I was hanging out with one of the Reddit admins in a side Discord, and he asked me about like the experience of misogyny on Reddit, and I didn't know about the transphobia issue at the time because I just didn't. Everybody's experience of Reddit is a little different, and so I said that misogyny on Reddit is like off the fucking charts, right? Like you cannot as a woman post a picture on Reddit without being sexually harassed. And that's crazy. And then he said, "What do you want me to do about it?" And I said, "I don't know, you could care about it. Like it's kind of your job." And he said to me, I've got
Sorry,
to
that
go to
just
lunch. No. It's literally how the conversation went. That he said to me, I have to go to lunch, and then that motherfucker has not ever spoken to me since. And so I was like, I'm gonna use Reddit to get women together to like make these men miserable. And so I created this Discord, and then I didn't do it because that was an anger thing, and it didn't, they didn't real have the real motivation and plans behind it to actually execute my plan. And also I had some things going on in my real life. So when the recent like when the election happened, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna start up my women's only group that I wanted to create. And if we all want to go troll people on Reddit together, we can do that. But perhaps that wasn't a good foundation of like why to form a community in the first place.
yeah. I mean,
Regardless, the community exists, and I appreciate having it here.
it is a very nice
100%.
community from the time I spent here, I want to say.
Thank you. And we're so glad to have you too.
So the FlexiTech made another comment, said the problem with anarchy is it cannot be your public relations policy, just like how deregulating healthcare is not the public relations policy of the people who do it. They have the Bible.
When I interact, as a leader, I tend to lead with the community instead of myself in my decisions. So I don't hold on a second. Could you read his comment again? I
Yeah.
was going somewhere with it. Actually,
The,
just link me to the YouTube page.
the problem with anarchy is it cannot be your public relations policy, just like how deregulating healthcare is not the public relations policy of the people who do it. They have the Bible.
Thank you. And that is what I meant. And I treat the word community like a religious thing, because that's what we're missing so much in today's society, is like a feeling of community and people that we feel like have our back and care about our interests. And so instead of, when I talk to people about ideas that are inherently anarchistic, I talk about them as community minded ideas. And that's a lot easier to talk to people about because it's not a scary word associated with chaos.
Well, yeah, and the whole reason why the word is associated with chaos is because, hey, back 2,000 years ago when the word was thought up, you had a bunch of these monarchies and empires that said, no, you can't overthrow us because then it'll be chaos, without ever actually proving that it would be chaos. There have not been any true anarchist societies, especially in the past 1,000 years.
There have been some attempts, though. I think the closest things are like obviously something like Catalonia or currently whatever's going on in East Syria. But obviously, those are like very limited examples. You haven't actually gotten like an actual proper long-term running society up, sadly.
As
You always
as
get wiped
for
out.
as for my response to the comment at hand, I don't have a public relations policy because I'm not trying to appeal specifically to the public. Anarchism should appeal to any conservative that believes in small government, because the smaller the government, the closer you are to anarchism.
And see, my goals right now in my community building are in fact a little bit of anarchy spreading. So it's funny that we're coming at this from the different angle.
Yeah, well, I mean, you still, and this is probably a good time to bring up your topic of mobile anarchist communities that got derailed 2 weeks ago.
And this is kind of a fun one. So last week I asked if anybody had any association or had ever interacted with Alcoholics Anonymous, and I am going to ask again since there are new people here.
I
As
cannot say that I have any experience.
It's okay.
as I
So-
said before, I don't.
Alcoholics Anonymous is the largest anarchist organization that you have not really looked directly at then. They are a leaderless organization. They have meetings all over America. They're considered very harmless. And there's probably a meeting in your community.
Wait,
What
isn't like Alcoholics Anonymous like a worldwide thing? Because we have it here
It
as
is.
well.
So Alcoholics Anonymous is a viral idea of how you can form community and help each other when you have an addiction. And it has spread worldwide. So you have it where you are?
We certainly have it in Europe as well. So I'm like wondering, it's probably everywhere.
That's so cool. Yeah. So the reason is that it's very portable. You can start a meeting anywhere that you have a bunch of chairs in a circle. Sometimes, if you're fancy, you can put a table in between those chairs, and then you can set down the meeting stuff that they hand out. And so you get into the meeting, and you read out a few different inserts from the Alcoholics Anonymous, like how it works and what the 12 steps are. And they talk about how this works because they don't have leaders and they don't have spokespeople. You show up and you meet together and you help each other out, and then you go on with your life. You're not going to become famous from going to Alcoholics Anonymous, but what you are going to get is a group of people who are trying pretty much in the same goal as you if you are trying to quit drinking, to be a better person in the same way. And from that little kernel, people have built this amazing community everywhere that Alcoholics Anonymous flourishes. I've seen people go from being homeless to owning their own house using the program, and the help that other people gave them from it. It's transformative. And I have been thinking about how women could use the simplicity of how it's structured to pass on community building with each other and support during these trying times, because I think that you would be surprised how much good can come from showing up and meeting with each other at the same goal once a week and talking.
I was
Seems
recommended.
like it's an easy. Sorry.
It sounds amazing. I've never heard it explained like that. Sorry.
Oh,
No,
I think so. AA is one of those things. I didn't quit drinking through AA, although, as you can tell, I have spent a lot of time around AA. I got a DUI when I was in my 20s, and what I did was I quit driving, which made a lot of sense to me in my drunken 20s. And so I was in and out of AA. Ultimately, the pandemic happened, and I just didn't think there was enough room in my one bedroom apartment for me, another person, and alcohol. And I had to kick the alcohol out. But the community that I experienced really stuck with me. And not everybody in AA is the kind of person that you would necessarily want to bring home to meet your mother. But while you're there, you feel the shared humanity.
my only issue with the addiction, um, with the addiction meetings is the part about God and the 12 steps. I've never been a fan of it, which is why I never went.
know that we need to keep that particular part anyway. I think in the 12 steps program, like in my opinion, from where I stand, there's a lot of self-shaming. I know why I struggled with drinking, and it wasn't necessarily that I am just such a flawed asshole that I don't care about the people around me, which is kind of an impression that you can get from certain, like some AA meetings you'll go to and they're like super chill hippie people, and some AA meetings you go to and they're like really big fucking assholes. And maybe I did sell them a little bit too strongly, because like not every AA meeting is kumbaya. But
no.
like, yeah, because like a lot of them will let you swap out God or like whatever. Like the point is that you figure out how to get on the train to go to the station. It's not that you have to be dressed exactly right, you know? So I think like I like the idea of telling people like why we think it'll work, why they like the benefits of coming together and talking, and like instead of like 12 steps, having them work on like maybe like 12 community building exercises to form a stronger group.
Yeah, that works. Honestly, when it came to my issue with alcohol, the Sacco in my unit said, "Get your shit together, Hammer," and I got my shit together.
That sometimes you just need like the circumstance has to just be perfectly right. I had tried to stop drinking before and it hadn't been easy, but for some reason, I just like trying to deal with being an alcoholic in my tiny apartment was just way more effort than just quitting drinking. And it made it really easy. And then after a while, my life kept getting better. And so I didn't want to go back anyway.
By the
Also, my
way,
skin got better.
I wanted to thank Ruby for her coming in and talking. So I want to bring this back to the word anarchy for a minute. Because there is such a strong stigma around the word, because it has been pushed by governments throughout the centuries as to mean chaos, when it doesn't. Anarchy is two Latin words put together.
I thought they were
And
Greek words.
that is it. Greek. There's a bunch of languages that share the same root, and it's Latin. So an means no or without, and arc or arch, which means the key. It was often referred to in that way when talking about the keystone in an arch. So, no key or no leader, no head of the arch, which is also where we get monarchy, or, any sort of government, democracy. It all stems from that. The belief that there is a leader.
You
Or a
know, it's
head.
funny that you brought up the exact definition, because earlier I was going to say, like, I think part of the problem with getting people to agree on certain ideas is because they're either right or wrongly linked to these very like controversial words, or these words that have historically been used to like stir the pot or demonize certain ideas. And I think that at some point, like, almost giving them that label hinders them, because people will just associate them with this idea they have of this word that gets thrown around a lot, when in reality, if you take that word away and just present the ideas to them like point blank without a title on them, I think a lot more people would be it would be easier to get people on the same page that way, because I think people bring certain preconceived notions in when you use certain like big buzzwords for different topics and stuff. And I
Well,
think
and
that anarchy is definitely one of them.
that's kind of how me and Liz met on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Is she was having an argument with someone, and I don't remember, Liz. Did we disagree on that topic?
No, you came in right as they were trying to talk shit about me, because they didn't understand what the word anarchist meant.
Okay, so I I
I
tried to
don't think we had been disagreeing or talking before that, is what I'm saying. Like, you just kind
yeah
of came in right at that point.
I I see miscommunications on a daily basis, and I try to come in and bridge the gap between people. And you're right. That's what we were talking about at the time, or what you and that other person were talking about at the time. There was another period just before the election where uh, someone had issues with other people talking shit about Kyle Rittenhouse, and you were arguing with her, and I told you I
I was
don't think.
arguing with her that I didn't think her meme was an appropriate simile, or whatever the right
Yeah,
word is, metaphor.
and I came in and I tried to bridge the gap. It turned out, you unfriended her anyways, but regardless, I
That's
don't.
because she said something extremely cunty, okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm not going to force you to interact with someone you don't like. I'm just simply saying, I saw a miscommunication. I tried to help bridge the gap. I don't like seeing fights between people I like.
Hey,
No, I tried to give her a chance.
That's what us calm folks do, isn't it? We're supposed to be really good at communicating.
Yeah. Except for calm has no comms ever.
It's all up to the calm gods at the end of the day.
Which is another story that I will tell you after I tell you the Hillary story once we get off the air. Um, Speaking of, we're coming up on an hour and 50 minutes. Is there anything else specifically anyone would like to bring up?
This has been a really
Well,
great conversation.
I think we kind of like didn't really get to talk about the part after the Nick Fuentes thing about how TERFs use
Oh,
that rhetoric because
turfs.
we
You know
kind of
what? No, we
went into
forgot
it.
to.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
not that
sorry.
we
I'm sorry. Yeah, just
No, no,
it's
no.
it
It's a good point.
it's not that we forgot to. It's just that it gets lost in everything else that surrounds it,
as I
because
said, the train derails really easily. That's okay.
yeah, well, but it gets lost in everything else because there is so much that surrounds it. I mean, your body, my choice. That there's so many things that fall into that category. We've got abortion, we've got general medical procedures, we've got being trans, we've got abortion. There is so much there to unpack that it just gets lost.
I also think that being anti-trans is frankly un-American. Like, who the fuck am I to tell you what procedures you can pay for out of pocket? Is this even America?
Well,
That's
and
what gets me about all of this. Who in the world are you to tell me what I'm supposed to do, and who am I to tell anyone else what they're supposed to do? We're all just trying to live our lives, and we're all just trying to make the best decisions possible in the moment with the information
Pursuit
that
of
we have.
happiness.
Yes.
Like, I believe in the pursuit of happiness. What is wrong with trans people? Like, I cannot, like, when people try to explain to me this, like, it's never anything that I find to be like, their issues are just like, I've had them say like they're all pedophiles, and like, how can that be true? Be real.
interesting.
Like,
Interesting that you bring up pursuit of happiness. Does anyone know where that phrase comes from? I'll take that as a no. So
no, because I'm looking it up before I say something. Like, if we were just talking on the phone, never mind, you say.
so when it comes to the Declaration of Independence, pursuit of happiness is mixed in with life and liberty. It's a famous line that was actually rewritten by Thomas Jefferson that was taken from the famous philosopher John Locke. Now, John Locke was wrong about a lot of things, like community duty or social contract of citizens and government. But the famous line that he wrote was, "All people are, or all men are endowed with certain inalienable rights, those being life, liberty, and the accumulation of property." Thomas Jefferson rewrote that not because he believed something different, but because he thought it sounded better when they sent the Declaration to King George.
I think it sounds better too, so I'm gonna side with Jefferson on this one.
I think it sounds
He
better
was a
too.
really
It
good
was simply
writer
just rhetoric.
sometimes. Yeah.
And it's also it's a totally different concept when you're talking about, like, yes, you can own things physically versus like a value of pursuing what you want in life. Like, it's not like you said, like, it's not everyone necessarily wants to own physical possessions. But what is more applicable to everyone is, chances are everyone does want to live the happiest life that they can. So
Well, and
it almost broadened it that way.
back
The
in 70
idea. Sorry.
back in 76 or in 1776 when it was written, property and happiness were construed as being the same thing because, let's face it, men generally value property over other things, and property
Mhm.
makes them happy. But when you look at the general population, it isn't just property, because women value different things different than men do.
Yeah,
So,
I definitely wasn't trying to imply that he was, like, enlightened in saying it, but
oh yeah,
just that it was definitely a good call because, especially with where we are now as a society, like, clearly it ended up being more applicable to more people the way that he ended up writing it.
I did pick
I
it
agree.
because it's in the rhetoric we all know. Like, everybody knows about the pursuit of happiness. Like, every fucking redneck will tell you about their right to pursue happiness. And so, like, how come it's a pursuit of happiness when somebody wants to own like 5 guns, but not when somebody wants to modify their body? And like, I am a huge believer that body modifications are just nobody's business.
I would agree.
As someone who's heavily tattooed, I agree as well.
Well, I mean, I have 4 tattoos and 4 piercings.
There you go. Yeah, I don't have any tattoos or piercings, but I find the idea of somebody telling me that should I choose to get over my fear of other people holding needles, that I can't do it, like, go fuck yourself. Is this,
Hey,
again, is this even America? And also, this is my body. Like,
I am
damn right I
I am
cannot do it.
I am deathly afraid of needles, Liz. Deathly afraid. I still inject myself every 5 days and have 4 tattoos.
I like, my issue with them is mostly when they're held by other people, and I can just about hold still for, like, if I have to get dental work done and they're doing the shot, I can be a big girl for that, but I don't think I can be a big girl for an entire tattoo. And I just don't wanna, like, pay to go in, and then, like, I hand the guy money, and it turns out that I cannot sit there with somebody else doing the needle thing, but someday, maybe.
My first tattoo was Mjolnir on the center of my back.
I couldn't do that. I have to be able to, like, when they do my shots and stuff, I have to be able to look them in the eye. It's very important to me. Otherwise, I can't get the shot.
You know, it's funny because I'm the exact same way about shots specifically, and I am not a fan of needles either, but f- there's something different about tattoo needles for me. I can sit for hours with tattoo needles, but like now when it comes to shots, like I want to watch it happen or else I'm going to
It's
freak out.
it's the
I
burning
have
sensation.
I have a few times in my life, like, I've, like, been mentally well enough and, like, bucked up in myself and had the money where I've gone to tattoo shops, and then in the period of time that it takes to wait to get the tattoo, I chicken out.
What
Okay,
I don't
so no, go ahead.
sorry. What I don't get about it is why people even care about things that really don't affect them.
Um, Generally because they are surrounded by people who believe the same thing, and anything that is different is wrong. It's human nature to look at something, look at your present surroundings, and anything out of the norm will cause you fear or anger.
I heard that there's people who think that the world feels safer and more secure when they feel like they are in control, and then there are people who feel safe and secure when they feel like somebody competent is in control. And these two different types lead us to not be able to understand why the fuck the other person is saying what they're saying.
I think there's a degree of narcissism with it too where it's people, subconsciously thinking my way is the best way. I know what's right and what's best, and these other people just don't know. Like, I think the idea that there are people that live their lives differently, like, honestly baffles them. And I
Oh yeah,
don't
no,
think
my
that they.
dad is one of them. Like, my dad legitimately does not understand when people like things that he doesn't like. Like, it confuses the hell out of him.
Yeah, and it becomes like almost like a narcissistic thing where it's like, well, they're clearly just not living right because they're not living the way that I would personally live. And they're just not able to see like any alternative ways of living.
It's a weird magical thinking. I don't understand it because it's not how my mind works. One time he was gambling and he won a TV, and he told me it was because he leads a pure and blameless life. And anyway, like, and he said it with a straight face, like he actually fucking believed it. And I don't know, like, I
Yeah,
don't think
because
like that.
a lot of the times their mindset is when something good happens to me, it's because I'm doing things the right way, and when something bad happens to me, it's because other people are not doing things the right way. It's a way for them to avoid,
It's very
accountability for
self-centered.
themselves. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
And also,
we
someone else being responsible is always, obviously, the most comfortable for most people. Also, sorry for cutting you off. Please continue.
no,
Sorry.
it is absolutely fine. We are now at an hour and 58 minutes, which means we've got to do our outros. And since Ruby did go ahead and say a few things, Ruby, would you like to say goodbye to the audience?
Yeah, okay, sure. I hope I can contribute more in the you know, following podcasts, but it was fun and I actually learned a few things from you guys. So thank you for having me on, and hopefully I'll be able to engage more later on.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to go ahead and ask Natalia to go ahead and say goodbye.
Bye. I don't know if I'll appear again. Goodbye, though. Bye. Sorry. The goodbyes. Bye.
And then we'll go on to Haley, our fellow or sister Marine that I really want to fuck shit up with. Please say goodnight.
Oh, I'm so excited to fuck shit up with you too. I'm looking forward to nothing more in my life than that. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Absolutely. And of course, my friend from the South, Liz. Please say goodnight, Liz.
Good night, and thank you for having this in my server. This was a fantastic time, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually thinking that maybe we can make this a weekly or bi-weekly thing if you want. Um with that said, I'm going to go ahead and play the intro slash outro music. We will see everyone either in a week or in 2 weeks. Have a good one.